Everyone thinks homelessness is loud, torn clothes, sidewalks, cardboard signs, but the truth is darker. Sometimes a man lives in a car for 2 full years, parked on the same streets you drive past daily, and nobody notices. Not neighbors, not co-workers, not even the police. Picture an ordinary parking lot. A regular sedan, slightly dusty, parked between two SUVs. Nothing strange about it. People walk by every morning with coffee, kids, phones in hand. Inside that car, a man wakes up, folds his blanket, wipes the windows, changes his shirt, then steps out like any commuter heading to work. For 2 years, this was his bedroom, his closet, his entire world. And the wildest part? Nobody around him had any idea. He wasn't hiding in some forest or alley. He was right there, in plain daylight, surrounded by hundreds of people every single day. His survival wasn't random. It was a system. Wake up before sunrise, before anyone could peek inside. Drive to a gas station to brush his teeth. Use a gym membership for showers. Eat cheap, quiet meals from drive-thrus. Charge his phone at libraries. Park somewhere different every night so no security guard would memorize his car. Keep clothes folded in a small bag, not scattered. Always look like he was about to leave, never like he lived there. Every hour was choreographed. Every movement designed to avoid suspicion. This wasn't laziness or giving up. This was discipline most people couldn't survive even for a week. The reason nobody noticed wasn't luck. It was strategy. He understood something most people never realize. Society doesn't actually look at individuals. It scans for patterns. If you don't look like a problem, you become invisible. So he kept his shirts clean, shaved regularly, smiled politely at strangers, greeted shop owners, walked with purpose, never lingered too long in one spot. Office workers thought he was a customer. Shoppers thought he was a neighbor. Security guards assumed he belonged. Even the police, who passed that street dozens of times a day, never gave him a second glance. Because he didn't fit the image of homelessness people carry in their minds. No torn clothes, no shouting, no smell, no sign, just a quiet, presentable man getting in and out of his car. And here's the uncomfortable part. That cover wasn't freedom. It was a full-time job. Every hour spent looking normal was an hour stolen from rest, healing, and hope. Now, zoom out. How does someone end up here in the first place? It's rarely one big disaster. It's usually small cracks that grow. Rent rises faster than wages. A medical bill wipes out savings. A job ends without warning. A relationship breaks. Family support disappears. And suddenly, the math doesn't work anymore. You can't afford a deposit. You can't pass a credit check. You can't risk a shelter where your belongings might be stolen. So the car becomes the last private space you own, the last piece of dignity. People imagine homelessness as a sudden fall, but for millions, it's a slow slide. And here's what's changed. Modern poverty doesn't always look poor. It looks like a tired man at a coffee shop, a woman charging her phone at the airport, a worker eating lunch alone in a parked car. The system isn't producing fewer homeless people, it's producing better hidden ones. Now imagine the nights. Winter cold seeping through the metal, summer heat trapping the air, condensation forming on the windows from his own breath. Every sound outside a footstep, a dog, a knock making his heart race. Was it the police? A drunk stranger? Someone reporting him? He couldn't fully sleep. He couldn't fully relax. There was no door to lock behind him in a real sense. No walls thick enough to feel safe. The hardest part wasn't the cold or the hunger. It was the silence. The kind of silence where you can hear yourself thinking too loudly. Where loneliness stops being an emotion and becomes a physical weight pressing on your chest. Most people complain about a bad mattress. He hadn't felt a real bed in 700 nights. And still, he had to wake up the next morning, fix his collar, and pretend everything was fine. That's not survival. That's a slow, quiet war fought inside a parked car. To stay invisible, he built a second life, a logistics machine. Gym memberships became bathrooms, 24-hour stores became safety zones at 3 a.m, public libraries became offices, fast food parking lots became dinner tables. Every receipt was kept to look like a paying customer. Every document ID, insurance, birth certificate wrapped in plastic, hidden under the seat, mail forwarded to a P.O. box. Phone bills paid first, before food, because without a phone, he couldn't apply for jobs. He learned which streets had cameras and which didn't, which neighborhoods called the cops on parked cars, and which didn't care, which gas stations were friendly, and which kicked people out. This wasn't a chaotic life, it was an organized one. He wasn't lazy, he was running an entire underground operation just to appear ordinary, and the more skilled he got at hiding, the deeper he disappeared from the world that could have helped him. Here's the deeper truth most people miss. Society sees suffering only when it's loud. A man screaming on a sidewalk gets attention. A woman crying outside a shelter gets attention. But a quiet man sleeping in a sedan? Nothing. Our brains are wired to skip what looks normal. We assume a parked car is temporary. We assume a clean shirt means stability. We assume silence means safety. None of those assumptions are reliable, but they make our days easier, and honestly, it's not just laziness, it's comfort. If we admitted that the man in the next car might be living in it, we'd have to admit something terrifying, that the line between housed and homeless isn't a wall, it's a thread. So we choose blindness not because we're cruel, but because seeing the truth would force us to question everything we believe about safety, success, and effort. Invisibility, in this case, isn't something he created alone, it's something society quietly agreed to. Think about how many times you've walked past a parked car without ever wondering who might be inside. Think about the assumptions you make when you see a man eating alone at midnight in a fast food parking lot. We tell ourselves stories. He's waiting for someone. He's on a long drive. He just got off work. These stories protect us. Because the alternative that he has nowhere else to go would force us to do something. And doing something is harder than looking away. Psychologists call this normalcy bias. It's the same instinct that makes people ignore smoke alarms and dismiss warning signs. We crave the world to keep looking the way we expect it to. So we filter out anything that breaks the picture. A homeless man in dirty clothes fits a category he's labeled processed, ignored. But a clean-shaven man in a quiet sedan breaks no category. He doesn't trigger guilt, he doesn't trigger fear, he triggers nothing. And that nothing is exactly why he survived 2 years inside a vehicle nobody questioned. 2 years sounds like time, but for him, it was erosion. Sleep deprivation rewires the brain. Constant alertness destroys focus. Poor hygiene options crush self-esteem. No address means no easy job applications, no bank accounts opening, no stable healthcare, and asking for help carries its own risk judgment from strangers, suspicion from police, the threat of his car being towed and taking his entire life with it. People imagine the hardest part of homelessness is the lack of shelter. It's not. It's the lack of margin. One ticket, one breakdown, one stolen wallet, and the entire fragile system collapses. He wasn't free in that car. He was trapped inside something that looked like freedom from the outside. A vehicle is supposed to take you somewhere. His was taking him in circles, around the same blocks, the same gas stations, the same parking spots, year after year, with no exit visible. And the cost wasn't only physical, it was identity. When you spend every waking hour managing invisibility, you slowly forget who you were before the car. Old hobbies disappear. Friendships fade because you can't invite anyone home. Family calls become shorter because every honest answer would require a confession you're not ready to make. You stop dreaming about the future because the future feels like a luxury you can't afford. Every plan shrinks to 24 hours. Where to park tonight, where to wash tomorrow, where to eat after that. The world calls this surviving, but it's really a slow surrender of self. Worse, the longer it lasts, the harder escape becomes. Employers want a permanent address. Landlords want references. Banks want history. Each closed door tightens the loop. The car doesn't just shelter him, it begins to define him. And the cruel irony is that the better he gets at hiding the situation, the more impossible it becomes to ask for the help that could end it. And here's what nobody wants to hear. This isn't just his story. It's a story sitting inside the lives of millions. One layoff away, one medical emergency away, one rent hike away, one breakup away. The people you work with, eat next to, smile at some of them, are closer to a parked car life than they'll ever admit. Modern survival isn't about how much you earn. It's about how well you can hide when things go wrong. Stable life today doesn't mean stable life next year. We celebrate appearances, clean clothes, nice phones, polite smiles, and we mistake them for security. But appearances are the cheapest thing to fake. Behind a tucked-in shirt could be a man who hasn't slept in a bed for 24 months. Behind a polite good morning could be someone who counted coins for breakfast. The mirror is uncomfortable because it shows us how easily our own image could be the disguise next. Look around your own office, your own neighborhood, your own family group chat, the coworker who never joins lunch outings, the friend who suddenly stopped posting on social media, the cousin who keeps changing addresses. We assume privacy. We assume preference. We rarely assume crisis. Yet research keeps showing that a shocking percentage of working adults are one missed paycheck away from losing their housing. Not lazy people, not addicts, not stereotypes. Teachers, nurses, drivers, cooks. People who clock in every day, smile at customers, and quietly drive to a parking lot when their shift ends. The mirror isn't just about him. It's about how thin the glass really is between any of us and the situation we mock from a distance. Stability is not a status, it's a season. And seasons change without warning. The most disturbing part of this story isn't that one man lived in a car for 2 years, it's that he could. In a city full of people, cameras, neighbors, co-workers, and police, he disappeared in plain sight. Not because he was clever, not because he was lucky, but because society rewards silence. We praise people who don't complain. We ignore people who don't disrupt. We celebrate those who handle it themselves. And in doing so, we create a world where the quietest sufferers become the most invisible ones. He didn't hide from us. We hid from him. Every time we walk past that car without looking, we reinforce the system that kept him there. His invisibility wasn't a personal failure, it was a collective one. We built a culture where struggle must be polished before it's allowed to be seen. Beg loudly, and you're a nuisance. Suffer quietly, and you're a ghost. There's no middle ground that protects dignity. So people choose the ghost route because at least invisibility doesn't come with insults. But the price of that invisibility is paid in years lost, opportunities missed, and slow damage to the body and mind. The man in the car wasn't an exception. He was a warning. A small, silent warning parked on streets we drive every day, telling us something we keep refusing to hear, that our definition of normal is hiding more pain than we want to admit. So maybe the real question isn't how one man lived in a car for 2 years without being noticed. Maybe the question is, how many people around you are surviving the exact same way right now, and we still call it normal? Maybe the next time you pass a quiet sedan in a parking lot, you'll look just a little longer. Not to stare, not to judge, but to remember that behind every ordinary window, there could be an extraordinary story the world chose not to see.